All right, guys, so in the last video, we set up our application with Create React App. I have the dev server running right now, but I'm going to go through some basic cleanup that I do with pretty much all my React applications and just get rid of some of the stuff we don't need. Another thing I'm going to do is change the app component to a class-based component because I want to work with those first, because although we're going to be dealing mostly with functional components along with hooks and some of the newer features, it's important for beginners to understand how class-based components work and life cycle and so on. All right, so let's jump back in here. And as I delete some of these, our server is going to break just because it's going to be looking for files that aren't there, but we'll fix that as we go along. So there's 4 files in the source folder that I usually get rid of, and that's the service worker. If I'm not doing anything to do with PWAs and cache and stuff like that, I'm going to delete that along with the logo SVG, the index CSS, and the app.test. Okay, we're not going to do any testing here. So let's go ahead and delete those. And as soon as I do that, I'm going to get an error that says can't find the service worker JS, because if we go into index.js, it's looking for, actually it should give us a few errors because it's not going to find the CSS either. But let's get rid of the import of the CSS and the service worker, and then we don't need this service worker unregister. So this cleans up this file quite a bit. I'm going to save that. We're still going to get a warning or an error saying that it can't find logo SVG, because if we go into our main app.js, up at the top, it's trying to look for logo SVG, which no longer exists. I'm going to keep the reference to app CSS. That's our global CSS. And then within the return here of the components, I'm going to get rid of everything inside the main div. Okay, in fact, I'll just put an H1 here, and I'll just say hello from React. And we'll save that, and now everything should be good. If we go back to our browser, we see hello from React. Now, the reason it's centered and all that is because of the global style sheet, which if we look at app CSS, if I get rid of everything and save it, now we don't have any styling. Now, as far as the CSS goes for this project, I have a custom file that I'm going to be using that has a lot of classes that are similar to Bootstrap, like button classes, alerts, all that stuff. I didn't want to actually use a third-party framework because there's a few reasons. One, I just didn't want to use an extra framework. Two, you know, that stuff gets updated all the time, and I don't want the course to go out of date just because of Bootstrap or any other framework. Although in the last project we will be using Materialize. But for this one, I just have an app CSS file that I'm going to include in the project file, so you should be able to find it in this lecture. And I'm just going to go ahead and let's just copy this and put this into our project right in the source folder. We're going to replace the app CSS that's there. Okay, so we're going to replace that. And now if we go back to our browser, you'll see that there's some style changes. We're using a different font. The margin is gone from the body and so on. Okay, so if we take a quick look at that app CSS, we have some variables for different colors, primary color, dark color, etc. And if you want to mess with this stuff, obviously you can do that. We're using the Roboto font. We have a basic reset, just some core styles, and then we have a bunch of utilities like our container, text styles, so for large text, extra large text, different text colors which pertain to those variables above. We have cards, lists, padding, and margin classes. And when I use these classes in the project, I'll explain what they do. We even have some grid stuff, which I don't believe we're going to be using. I'm not sure. I forget. But down here we have like badges, alerts, different colors of buttons and badges and alerts. So pretty similar to Bootstrap in terms of classes. We have some form styling, so form inputs look good. All right, so that's our global CSS. Now, the next thing I want to do is turn this main app component into a class-based component rather than functional. Just for now, just so we can learn about class-based components. So basically, the way that we do that is we need to change this to a class. We're still going to call it app. We're going to get rid of the parentheses, because it's a class, it's not a function. Now, we can't return directly from a class. We need what's called a method, which is basically a function within a class. And that method needs to be called render. So render is actually what's called a lifecycle method, and it runs at a certain point when the component's loaded. Now, there's other lifecycle methods as well that you can run at certain points, but render is the one that's actually required because that renders the output. So all we have to do is take this return and move it up into the render. Okay, now just doing this isn't going to work because we have to extend the core React component. So we're going to say extends react.component, or I should say the React component class, which includes all the lifecycle methods, all that stuff. So if I save this, we should get the same result. Okay, only now we're using a class-based component rather than a functional. And what I'll usually do is take this part off, the React dot, and just bring it in up here. And just bring in component. That way we don't have to say react.component. Okay, so you can see that that works. All right. Now, in the next video, now that we have our cleanup done here, I just want to go over JSX, which is this right here, which looks almost identical to HTML. I'm going to go over some of the differences. I'm also going to show you what this would look like if we did not use JSX, if we just use, regular JavaScript. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.